past in such a way that it will propel us to a better future. We know we stand on the shoulders of many who have come before us. Some of you are here with us today. We stand on the shoulders of those that have opened doors through many means. Some shouted loudly, while others had to whisper in fear. Some had to bulldoze the path, while others marched through it. And some stood in protest and solidarity, even getting arrested for their belief, so that today we could be invited to the table. And all care deeply for fairness and opportunities for all, and believe that the state of Washington can truly be a place that not only believes in the contributions of all, but truly embraces it. To those who have gone before us, we owe you so much and give our thanks and heartfelt appreciation. There are great things happening in our state and communities because of them, and because of partners, such as many of you who take the challenge of social justice to heart. We could not do the work we do without the partnerships of so many across the state, and we thank you. Latinos are a very talented, committed, passionate community. A community full of so many hardworking individuals and families that have contributed in great ways to our great state and nation. Throughout the night, you will hear about some of them. Yet in all the celebrating, we must also take a moment to define where we are going. We must continue to challenge ourselves because there is still much work to be done. We cannot be satisfied with being invited to the table. We must continue to strive for the time when across all systems, we are also invited to design the table. I don't remember a time when the impact of Latinos in an election season was mentioned more. We even heard our president mention our dreamers in his acceptance speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the good news is we are making an impact. We have been noticed. The challenge is, how do we continue to play a role in our communities that leaves lasting change? How do we assure that 40 years from now, the professionals sitting around the table celebrating the anniversaries include our children? When all the celebrating is done, I go back to the reality of looking into the faces of my students and families who face inequities daily, based on ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, and socioeconomic class. I face the reality of a school-to-prison pipeline, the reality of lack of access to services. We at the Commission of Hispanic Affairs hear about the disparities in health care, farm labor, economic development, voters' rights, and education. We hear and see the desperation on mothers' faces, the frustration of providers who lack the funding to meet the needs, and the outcomes to families, community, and society. We must do better. I was recently in Washington, D.C., where I heard the demographic changes, when they reported that by 2050, Latinos will comprise 60% of our labor force. As a school counselor, I have seen the demographic changes in our school system. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say that everyone wants all Latino students to succeed because it's the moral thing to do, or even because it's a civil rights issue. But if those two reasons do not resonate with some, they will need to grapple with the fact that it is the necessary thing to do. If we want to continue to be economically a strong country and continue to compete globally, it will be the necessary thing to do. After celebrating, I will go back to the reality that every day the education achievement opportunity gap exists. Our country loses millions of dollars a year. But we lose not only economic capital, we lose human capital. We lose young men and women to prisons, gangs, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, depression, and addictions. Ladies and gentlemen, we lose young men and women to desperation and a lack of hope that takes away their dreams, desires, and aspirations for their future. This is not just a civil rights issue, an economic issue, a moral issue. It is an obligation and a higher calling for us to do what is right. In closing, I would like to share the story of a young lady whose story continues to fuel my passion for equity that I hope will continue to fuel yours. It is a story that came true because of systems that came together to make a dream come true. It is the story of our educational system, foundations, businesses, higher education, and parents working together. It is Vanessa's story. So you see, Vanessa was a young girl I had the privilege to work with for 4 years. And throughout those 4 years, I saw how she struggled to maintain a job to help support her family. I saw her how she struggled to take AP and honors courses, studying till midnight. I saw how she struggled to be accepted in classes while she did community service and was a leader in her school. I saw her struggle, and I was thrilled to be able to nominate her for the Gates Scholarship. I also had the privilege to call her into my office one day and tell her that she has won the Gates Scholarship. At that time, now the Gates Scholarship pays all the way through her doctorate degree. And as I told her that, I held her in my arms as she collapsed and cried. And I said, Vanessa, what are the tears about? And she said, you have to understand, Ms. Ortiz. My mother told me this story every year of my life, and it has come true. And this is my mother's story. And she said to me that she grew up in a village in Mexico where all she saw around her was poverty and death and diseases and illnesses. And she one day wanted to have a child, but knew that would not be the area, or she could not have it there. And so regardless of your immigration stance, please hear her mother's plea, which goes like this. At the age of 18, she saved money and she hired a coyote to take her across the border. And the time came when she was crouched down in the dark and it was cold, and the coyote gave the warning to start running. And she tells her daughter how that one day she got up and she ran. And she was running really hard, and all of a sudden felt her heart was giving out, and she couldn't breathe, felt she was getting dizzy, her legs were getting heavy, and she collapsed. And at that moment, she saw her dream slipping away. It was at that moment that someone came behind her and grabbed her by the shoulders and pulled her up. And they looked her in the eye and then said, why are you running? And she said, I have a dream for a family one day, a family that I will be able to support, a family that will not die in poverty and disease. And he looked at her and he said, well, then you better keep running. And she did. She kept running. And Vanessa said, Ms. Ortiz, for the last 13 years of my educational experience, when I would come home crying saying, the teachers don't think I am smart enough to have my dream, my mother would say, can you keep running? She said, Ms. Ortiz, when I would be called racial slurs because I'm a Mexican, my mother would say to me, can you keep running? She said, Ms. Ortiz, when kids would make fun of me and say, I am not smart enough, she would say, keep running. She said, Ms. Ortiz, so you don't understand, because what this means to me right now is that for once in my life, I don't have to run anymore. I can now walk. So as we celebrate the great contributions of Latinos in Washington, while we celebrate all the accomplishments of the Commission of Hispanic Affairs and so many allies and partners that have walked this journey with us, let us continue to challenge ourselves to make it possible for everyone to have the opportunity to walk towards equity, access, voice, and freedom, to walk towards educational opportunities and career options, to walk towards equity for all. So that 40 years from now, our school administrators, our teachers, our legislators, our judicial systems will look as diverse as the diversity in our nation. We must remember our past, and we must challenge ourselves to continue the work that lies before us. But it is also okay to take some time to celebrate the present. So with the challenge that lies before us and the remembrance of the past, I would like to take some time again to thank you all for coming to celebrate the present with us today. Let the celebration begin. Enjoy your dinner.